Food is important. Exercise is important. Health, your health, is very important. So those are the three aspects that we're going to be discussing right now. So follow along and join us. So Grace, food,
Yeah.
I know that's your favorite subject. So you should have lots to talk about when it comes to food.
Yeah.
Health, well, maybe you're not too worried about your health at this
No.
point, but I'm worried about my health. So that's something we need to talk about as well.
Yeah.
And this other aspect of exercise.
Yeah.
Now we know we've spoken about this a bit. We haven't done enough exercise, and we're going to have to.
Yeah.
I know you don't do much exercise in your life.
No.
You never have, and it's quite difficult to motivate Grace to exercise.
Yeah.
Okay, because like I've said before, even just to do a short trip, I know the kind of ministry that I do, when I took her on the first time, just walking, she didn't even last 15 minutes. And she said her feet were sore, she's tired. And yeah, I was expecting somebody that could like walk for 2 hours, 3 hours without a problem. Now she can walk for about an hour without complaining too much. So exercise, exercise, exercise. So let's go through it. How does this relate to the Philippines? So there's a couple of aspects that I noticed when I was in the Philippines that we need to talk about because they will impact you as a foreigner, perhaps somebody more or less my age, going to the Philippines. How are you going to cope with the food? How are you going to cope with your health? And how are you going to cope with the need for exercise?
Yeah.
And I just want to not really talk about how you're going to do it yourself, but I want to just like look at the Philippines. How are they doing it? Because, you know, if you're going to the Philippines, you must fit in with the locals. So by seeing how they cope with it, it will either give you some indication about how is the right way to do it, obviously, because they've been doing it for years, haven't they? So they're used to the climate, they're used to the issues. So by following their example, it will help you. All right. So let's look at this first aspect of food. Now, you know, that is a topic you hear much spoken about on YouTube.
Yeah.
How foreigners don't necessarily like the food of the Philippines. You know, they'll go there like I did and probably want to experience everything. And, you know, for the first time, having a look at the food, what it looks like, and then tasting it, many times it tastes better than what it looks. Because not everything is presented in such a nice way. Because here in the West, we are more inclined to present things in a nice way, but the food doesn't taste that good. It looks good, but it doesn't taste good. But you know, the way the capitalism works is, as long as it looks good and you buy it, well, you know, once you bought it, that's it. You know, they've accomplished what they needed to do. However, in the Philippines, it's a little bit different. Generally, if you look at the food, it doesn't look very appetizing. However, if you taste it, it's another story. All of a sudden, you start realizing, wow, these tastes, the spices, the way they've incorporated, like I'm not very much into soups. And yet, in the Philippines, just about every single food in the province is some form of a soup. So that was quite difficult for me to get used to eating that broth. Because just normally I'm put off when I just see something like a soup. To me, it doesn't seem something substantial. However, when you've got the right thinking, when you understand that they mix the broth with the rice, it just changes everything. So you learn to do things that way. So what I'm getting at is initially you might just be put off, but give it a go. Taste it, see how they eat, what they eat with it, how they mix so much soy sauce with their food, and you'll quite enjoy it. But having said that, even if you do get to the point that you do enjoy it, is that food good for you? And that's really the crux of what I want to talk to you about. Because, I've only got Grace to go by. Okay, so when I met Grace, she had a specific type of diet that she was eating day after day after day after day for like those 20 years. So that obviously kind of made her who she was. All right?
Yeah.
So just a little story, just to put it in context, is like, obviously when I was dating Grace, I saw how she looked, how she walked, blah, blah, blah. It was only till I married her, because obviously we come from a very conservative background, also with our religious beliefs. You don't really know a person until the honeymoon. Okay, so during the honeymoon was really the first time I got to see Grace.
Yeah.
And more specifically, to the point, I got to hear Grace. Because instead of sleeping next to this beautiful, dainty, small Filipino, it felt more like I was sleeping next to a 380 kg trucker. The reason why I say that is because she snored like so bad. And I remember that night I just about died, because I just thought about all the implications of having that night after night after night, And really, it worried me, to be honest, And I tried to speak to her, I tried to figure it out. I snore. When I get to a certain weight, I snore. If I'm below that weight, I don't snore. Okay, so I try to kind of keep within that threshold so that I don't snore. Yeah. But now when you look at Grace, you don't see. I mean, you can see I'm big, I'm heavy, I'm overweight. Yeah. But Grace isn't. She's well within the right BMI. So why is she snoring? So I thought, obviously, there's other issues. And this is what is another aspect of when you're marrying a Filipino, coming from the province or coming from a different background, eating different foods, living in a different environment. You don't really know how well she is, how healthy she is. Yes, we had to do health checks and things like that, which all came up clean. But then a big issue, like for instance this one of snoring, does rear its head and does impact your life hugely. Because, if you can't sleep, you can't sleep. Yeah. And what does that mean? She has to move to another room. So we looked at all these kind of solutions, but weren't happy with any of them. And we also I took her to the doctor to find out what's going on. And obviously the doctor doesn't really know. It has to then go to some kind of specialist. But I got to thinking, maybe it's something to do with the food. Yeah. And that's the avenue I thought I'd first go down, because I knew for myself it had to do with the food. As soon as I got my food correct, my diet correct, I didn't snore anymore. So I thought, let me try this with Grace. Yeah. And that is exactly what we did. Because if you think about it, what kind of food were you eating on a daily basis? How many meals?
3 meals.
3 meals. And what were those meals made up of?
Rice, and most of them we eat fish, okay. And a little bit of vegetable.
Now that doesn't sound like a bad diet, does it? It's your rice, which Chinese people, Filipino people have been eating for millenniums. Yeah. And generally, when you look at them, they're very thin, And then she's eating fish, once again, perfect, and a little bit of vegetable, perfect. However, how much rice were you eating?
I did not estimate.
Well, I did estimate, because I could just see the plate. They would just pile on. So breakfast, they'd have a pile like this. And lunchtime, they'd have a pile like this. And supper, they'd have a pile like this. And you know what? They were always hungry. Yeah. Always hungry. However, now, you basically eat 1 meal a day.
Yeah.
And are you hungry?
No.
No.
Sometimes, my bone appetite said, you're not hungry, so don't cook for yourself.
Yeah. So it's taken a while, It's taken almost, I would say, it took a good 8 months. But she went from a terrible snorer to not snoring at all. And you can only put that down to one thing,
Yeah.
and that is the food. So, what was the food that was causing this? It can only be put down to the amount of starch, which we know is in rice.
Yeah.
And rice is just basically sugar. And unfortunately, the rice is not the rice that it used to be in the years gone by, centuries ago. The rice these days is tainted and it's heavily processed. And so too much of that, especially in Grace's case, was causing her to snore. All right, and that's just one of the aspects. I have noticed, even her body shape was very much up and down shape. I mean, we can show you wedding pictures. I mean, she was totally beautiful. But in comparison to now, where she's actually got, a, let's say, a waist
Yeah.
now, it's a total different picture altogether. And once again, we can only put it down to the food. So it's not just the amounts of rice.
Yeah.
Okay. I also noticed while I was in the Philippines, in fact, we went to one wedding and they made these huge pots of food because they were catering for like 200 people. But unlike what I would have thought, because they have got all the vegetables, they could have done it from the basics all the way through. But instead of doing that, I don't know if they were doing it for time or whatever, but I also noticed that this is a bit of a pattern in the Philippines, that they use a lot of tinned food, packaged food, and they just mixed it all together.
Yeah.
Right. Another thing, if we going to, well, Grace has got some very nice recipes that she's going to be using. And another thing I noticed, they like to use a lot of soda in their cooking. So pop, like Coca-Cola, Sprite, they use it in their cooking, like liters of the stuff, for the sugar content. I imagine that's the reason why they use it. So they're used to doing that on your main meals. And I think that's because obviously we know in tin food there's a lot of preservatives and there's got to be lots of basic poisons in that in order to preserve it in the tins. So that is a huge, huge issue. And here she doesn't have any tin food.
No.
She doesn't really. She does have still some packaged food. You still have it. She still likes her noodles and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about on the whole. So she's cut down from 3 meals to basically 1 meal and a bit of a snack in the evening, because you have like yogurts and berries and stuff. But generally we just eat 1 meal. Okay?
Yeah.
And none of it comes out of a tin. Most of it is whole foods.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're not really on a diet. We're not really. I have done keto before. I never managed to get into ketosis because obviously there was some sugar content in what I was eating.
Yeah.
But it's basically on that line, just watching what you eat and making sure you have lots of eggs. Now, Grace, you don't really fancy eggs, do you?
No.
So that's been a challenge because according to keto, you need to eat 4 eggs a day.
Yeah.
And that is a lot. I mean, I battle to eat 4. I probably eat 3 a day.
Yeah.
I can't get that last one in quite. But what she does do, because normally I used to, before I met Grace, I used to just fry my eggs or poach my eggs.
Yeah.
But now with Grace, she mixes it up. And like she puts spinaches, she puts, what's that? Moringa.
Yeah. And lettuce.
And lettuce. She does all kinds of things now to make what we would in the West call what do we call it? What do they say? Egg. When you mix the egg with, I can't remember now what it's called. I've lost the word. But that's a common thing we do in the West. Normally we used to chop in bacon and cheese and with your egg to like make it a bit more exciting. But she doesn't. She uses vegetables, and it's lovely. And that's basically my meal that I have, and that she's been having as well. Right?
Yeah.
And that is what has worked for her. So, coming back to the Philippines, I did notice that if you're going there as a foreigner, especially an elderly one like myself, where you've got to think about your high blood pressure, you've got to think about hypertension, you don't want to get a stroke, you don't want to be, having to think about hospitals and medical care, when all you really have to think about is what you eat. What you eat and the amount of what you eat. I'm still working on, I'm still trying to get rid of what's it called? The insulin resistance, fatty liver.
Yeah.
And that's really with intermittent fasting. So although we eat one meal a day, and that can be almost classified as intermittent fasting, we should really push it to one meal every second day.
Yeah.
Or maybe do that once a week. Now, we haven't got there. We probably in the new year are going to aim for that.
Yeah.
Because, but I think what we're doing, we're on the right road. The only thing we haven't added to it is the other part of what we wanted to discuss is exercise.
Yeah.
Now, in the Philippines, I think the saving grace of the Philippines, when you consider how much rice they eat, is actually they burn it off. Because it's so hot, they're burning calories. Because all of them have to hustle and bustle,
yeah,
they're busy. They're burning calories. Because, the data is quite expensive. They love to game. They love their mobiles. But for the general Filipino in the province, they can't afford data.
Yeah.
It's expensive, isn't it? But what it does do, that then forces them to go to their gymnasium. And what I noticed in your place, in your village,
yeah,
the gymnasiums are full. And literally from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 p.m. at night. It's quite annoying sometimes because they're on the PA. And what they're doing is they're playing basketball non-stop.
Yeah.
Okay, they've got their teams. This is Monday to Saturday. I don't actually understand when do they actually go to work, because they all seem to be playing the sports.
Yeah.
They're playing basketball. They're playing the volleyball. The women are playing volleyball. Generally, the women are playing football, which actually surprised me a lot. And so they're very busy all the time. And another thing that I saw a lot of is dancing, this group dancing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we know they all like karaoke, but they also like this dancing, whereby they have these groups and these groups compete against one another. So they're always practicing their dances. So you've got a mixture. So it's quite exciting when you go there. I mean, I love sport. So I love just watching people exercise, going about their sport and enjoying it and getting out. Unlike in the West where you go, we've got all the facilities. I know in the UK, you've got all these wonderful facilities, but they're standing empty because all the kids are at home on the gaming machines. And they are huge. They're not exercising. So I hate to think what's going to happen in the next 20 years in the West when it comes to things like diabetes. And that's why I think that's the saving grace. Although they eat a lot of rice, they are exercising a lot in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And they're exercising in that heat, which means they're really burning off a lot of calories. And it's ingrained in their mentality, which is good.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's good. What about health? That's probably our biggest worry if we're thinking about going to the Philippines. So it's really tied up with what I've been talking about. You've got to watch what you're eating, because the health service is not first world rated. It's not that type of grade. So you don't really want to have to go to a hospital if you can help it.
Yeah.
So the best way to do it is to help yourself.
Yeah.
Watch what you eat. Don't let your Filipino wife just cook like Grace started. In the beginning, she cooked very high levels of salt, very high levels of
soy sauce.
Yeah, sugar. There was also another thing she did. And also she just cooked too much food, because I think she had this understanding that the more I feed him, the happier he'll be. Whereas, in the beginning I did it because, I just want her to feel at home. But it got to the point that I stopped eating half the food, and I was
Yeah.
sending it back. And then she started thinking I didn't like the food anymore. And I just had to like put it plainly. I love your food.
Yeah.
Okay. We had to downgrade the amount of salt. Actually, she actually went the other way. I had to start adding salt sometimes because she started cooking without salt. But she also then changed. You know, she actually was able to adapt to even the Western way of cooking because she knows that I like fried chicken and you know Kentucky, that type of a taste. And I can tell you something. I need her to show you because unfortunately with Grace, I'm not even allowed in the kitchen when she's cooking. She chases me out. I don't know why. She just doesn't want me to see what she's cooking. I can only go in there, it seems like, when I'm filming her.
Yeah.
So we need to get her to make this, what I call Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's unlike Kentucky Fried Chicken that we know has to be pressurized to get that tenderness, and they've got the secret how they do it. I promise you, Grace does it, and it's tender, and it's far, far nicer the way she spices it up. I mean, the other night you didn't even crumb it, did you?
No.
You just did it with egg and your spices, and it was even nicer. So what I'm trying to explain to you is if you just explain to them what you do want, what you do like, they can do it.
Yeah.
And obviously the next issue you have with the Philippines and the way they cook when it comes to food is they always use, when you're frying, palm oil, which is poison. You know, it's like frying in diesel. You can't have her doing that. So stop her doing that right from the outset. She's not going to like it. Grace took a bit of umbrage to me saying we can't have palm oil. Like she just thought, well, then how's she going to cook?
Yeah.
But you know, coconut oil, brilliant. Use that. We use a lot of olive oil, virgin olive oil. Use that. You know, these are things that are okay.
Yeah.
They're not great. Don't do too much frying. Because unfortunately they like to fry everything. So I've even pulled away from, you know, if we have something fried, it's like once a week. That's like a bit of a treat.
Yeah.
Because otherwise she'll be frying something for you every single day, which really is not healthy, even if it's in coconut oil or olive oil. So health is important.
Yeah.
The other aspect that you've got to think about is your surroundings, your environment. Now, I did even pull Grace up on this because, you know, it's just in their mentality. I remember walking on the street with Grace and we opened, I don't know what it was. It might have been an ice cream or a sweet of some description. And what shocked me about her, she unpeeled it and then, you know what she did? What did you do?
I remember.
She just tossed it. She just tossed the paper and just carried on walking down the street. And, you know, we had these chaperones, and there's like 4 of them, and they just all do the same thing. So here I was picking up all their papers all day long and trying to educate them. Why are you doing this? But to them, it's just normal. It's just normal in the Philippines just to toss your litter.
Yeah.
So, you know, now she's come here, she's realized you don't do that. You know, she's also realized there's a lot more bins here. Okay. Yeah. The bins are here. She's also surprised you never see a rat here. Now, the reason you don't see rats here is because there's nothing for them to eat. You haven't left things out. Everything that you use, you discard properly. You know, either you put into fertilizer for your garden, or you've got sealed garbage. So that's another aspect of the Philippines. That can you cope with that level? Because rats are a problem. You know, you won't see rats maybe in just the normal places in America, maybe in the cities.
Yeah.
But you're not going to see them like I did, almost on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Wherever you are in the Philippines. And that's because, having said that, it's not like the Philippines is covered with trash. Don't get me wrong. You know, I went to Mombasa, and the trash is like 6 foot high. It's just piled.
Wow.
It's nothing like that. It's nothing like that. You know, you don't really see trash lying around.
Yeah.
However, you do see rats, which means there is trash. There's got to be trash there.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about, your environment. And that's another thing you might have to help your Filipino spouse, that when they cook, when they deal with things, you know, everything must be sanitized, everything must be cleaned away, everything must be washed. And they don't mind doing that. They're very good at washing, they're very good at cleaning. And as you know, worldwide, Filipino nurses are sought throughout the world. So, you know, when it comes to health, if they just educated and taught what's required, they will do it.
Yeah.
You know, and they would take care on how they do it. So I think we've discussed those 3 points. It's your food, exercise, and health in the Philippines. It's there to some degree, but maybe it's not ideal.
Yeah.
So just think carefully about whether you can live under those kind of conditions. And if you do, what steps would you put in place to make sure that some bit of education goes in, helpful education, nice, put over in a nice way. Because there is this thing about saving face. A Filipina, if you just tell her, listen, what you're doing is wrong, she can't handle that. She definitely cannot handle that. And what I do notice, if you just like make a little suggestion, they don't like even a little suggestion. But the next time, she's done it.
Yeah.
She's done it. And you don't ever have to talk about it again. So don't take umbrage when she kind of gives you that look. The Filipino, I call it the Filipino look. Because the next time she will take it to heart, and she won't, she will do what you've asked. So that's great. So if you've enjoyed this little discussion, maybe you want us to go deeper into one of the aspects, I don't know, think about it and give us a comment, eh?
Yeah. Subscribe.
Please, subscribe.
And
it's coming up nicely. And share.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk again to you tomorrow.
Okay.
All right then.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.